Hey, bestie. Let's talk about how to get close to God again when you feel disconnected. Almost every believer has experienced this being on fire for God to the point of feeling like you do anything for Jesus. And during that time, everything felt fresh, alive, and new. But somewhere in the mix, life happened and your faith blew out. Tell me, bestie, does this sound familiar to you? If you're listening to this audio, then there's a chance that you're on the brink of walking away, but you're willing to try just one more time. You may be a person who really wants God, but you just keep falling back into the same habits that keep you away from Him. Maybe you're feeling numb right now, and you're feeling like prayer, that really doesn't make sense to me anymore. Like, what's the point of it? Wherever you find yourself, I want you to know that the disconnection that you're feeling, that isn't a sign that something is broken without repair. And before we dive in, let me ask you this one question. What if you're already as close as you can get to God, but you just don't realize it? This audio will be all about how to get close to God again. Are you ready? Let's go. What does it mean to be close? Being close to someone means that you share a strong emotional bond. It means that you know them very well and that there's a level of intimacy that's not experienced with just anyone. Vulnerability is also included in that experience, but when it comes to being close to God, it's a little different. Just to state the obvious, we cannot see God. And that alone tells us that our relationship with Him, it isn't based on our physical senses. And y'all, so many of us, including myself, have based our connection with God solely on how we feel. We have conjunct in our mind that if we don't feel God or have some sort of emotional experience with Him, then somehow that means that we've missed Him. But, bestie, being close to God has very little to do with our feelings. It's more about our awareness, our openness, our connection, and our willingness to follow Him. And the truth is, we can only relate to God in spirit because we are spirits. We are spirits with souls inside of bodies. God literally took us out of Himself and He placed us within these physical bodies. But God still deals with us as we really are, as the spirits we are. Think about this. When we transition or die, it is our bodies being left on the earth and our spirits ascend. We have to go back to where we came from. And this is why He tells us to present our bodies as living sacrifices to Him. He desires for us to honor Him with the things that we can see, all of the things in the physical realm, right? And throughout my own journey of getting closer to God again, there are a few things that we can be conscious of. Number one, awareness. Y'all, disconnection, it doesn't just happen all at once. Any connection, it can slowly decrease over time, just like a phone battery. Think about it this way. Once you take your phone off the charger, what happens? The battery decreases throughout the day. And eventually, your phone notifies you that it needs to be charged again, right? So you've been made aware that your battery has been made low. And now it's time for you to think through what caused your battery to be low, aka what caused the disconnection. So I want you to journal through a few questions with God. Number one, when did you notice the disconnection? Number two, how was your relationship with God before this happened? Number three, what may have caused the disconnection? Number 4, where has your focus been lately? And number 5, has your relationship with God been based solely on how you feel and what you do? Number 2, openness. The way we connect with God is going to be different from how we connect with people. Again, God is spirit, and the only way that we can truly connect with Him is spiritually. We can't see Him. Have you ever wondered, why God doesn't just give us what we want when we're emotional? I believe it's because He wants to teach us how we're actually supposed to function, how He originally designed us to function. And a huge piece of this is learning not to lean on our own understanding, learning not to allow our senses to lead the way. And that calls for us to become more open to doing things God's way instead of our own. I want you to think about it like this. When you were little, or even when you were an adult, going to a new place is totally different from being at home. Whether you're going to school or working at a job, or if you've been at a job, it's going to be different than being at home, right? Because you're learning to adjust to a new structure. You're learning to adapt. You're learning to kind of code switch. And at first, going to a new place, you don't know what that place is going to be like. But you have this excitement, you have this nervousness, you have this eagerness, you have this curiosity to learn what this place is all about, and more importantly, how you're going to grow as a person, how God is going to grow you. And getting closer to God again, it requires that same level or same kind of openness. Number 3, connection. Tell me, if you had an answer to a problem, like a major problem, on your phone, but your phone was dead, what would matter most? Would it be the answer, or would it be getting yourself a charger to charge your phone so that you can get the answer? Bessie, I think we will all agree that getting the phone connected to the charger would matter the most in that situation. So we probably also agree with this statement. Connection is greater than solutions. Think through this question. Am I approaching getting closer to God again like it's a problem to solve? Because in any friendship, you are not constantly trying to fix things. For the most part, in friendships or even relationships, period, you're just trying to enjoy each other's company. So, how come we're approaching God like He's just another handyman in our lives? God desires connection, He desires relationship. So, connection with God, it matters far more than Him fixing our problems. Because what came first? We didn't have these problems first. We first had connection with Him. Now it's us rebuilding that connection. And that's a beautiful thing. Yes, we have real problems that require real solutions. But honestly, nothing could be solved without true connection with the one who is able to fix them. Now, all of that, Bestie, was talking about pursuing the relationship. But I needed to explain it because, sometimes we really just don't know how to pursue a relationship, or we think or overthink about these things. So, number 2, and how to, get closer to God again, is to become familiar with who He is. Spending time getting to know each other is literally what you do to build a relationship. And you never have to force a connection with somebody you're meant to be with. So when you're spending time with someone, what are you actually doing? You're learning their voice, you're learning the cadence of their voice, you're learning what matters to them, You're learning their morals and their values. You're learning how they communicate. In other words, you're just learning their character. So that's what we do with God. We learn his character. A true friendship, you learn a person's character, right? So next time you read the Bible, pretend that you're on a date or making eye contact with God, or spending time with the person that loves you the most, because these are things that are actually true. You can think through questions like, what is God like? What are some things that he loves? What are his boundaries? What are his values? Does he hate anything? How does he describe himself? What are his thoughts on this? What is his thoughts on friendship? What does he mean by when he says, lean not to your own understanding? Ask questions, because all the questions you ask, it gives you a chance to find out who God really is. It's not just collecting scriptures for times of trouble. It's getting to know the heart of the one who wants to be with you, who wrote the scriptures for you to get to know him. And the more familiar you become with him, the more you recognize how to walk with him throughout this life. And then number 3, last but not least, setting healthy boundaries. So boundaries, it's not something that we like to talk about when it comes to getting closer to God. It doesn't always make it into these kind of conversations. We usually think about setting boundaries for other people, but we are intelligent people. So we know that we must limit ourselves. We must. It's a requirement. You would love to go and eat all of your favorite food, but you know that that's not healthy. You would love to skip out on work. You would love to not go to school today, but you know that that's a boundary or a limitation that you have to set for yourself. You can't just go and eat all the food that you want all the time. You can't just skip school. You can't just skip work. You have to limit yourself. You have to discipline yourself, in other words. So, if I'm honest, if we're honest, besties, with ourselves and each other, sometimes the problem isn't that we're disconnected from God, that we can't hear what he's saying. Many of the times, we're just too distracted by everything going on around us as well as within us. Because I don't think a lot of people talk about the things that go on within us. All of the anxious thoughts, all of the things that we feel like we have to do right now, that we have to solve, feeling like we have to solve everything in a day. We always have our phones in our hands. We're always watching something. We're always trying to distract ourselves from ourselves and from God. And we spend hours working for someone else, whether you're going to a 9 to 5 or not. You're still working for someone else in a sense. You can be working for yourself and working for someone else if you're on TikTok, right? A lot of people make a lot of money on TikTok, but you're still working for TikTok in a sense. We're all answering to someone. And the reason why I say this is because we work all day and we give God 10 minutes of our time. How is that fair? And then we go to God expecting a new word or direction when we haven't even followed the instruction that he gave us last, his last instruction to us. And at some point, bestie, we have to make sacrifices for what we truly need and what we desire. So that can look like us putting away our phone for a few hours. That can look like us changing the content that we consume. That can look like us letting go of earthly things for some time in order to reconnect spiritually, aka fasting and praying. So, the biggest question that I came up with to conclude this is, how bad do you actually want your relationship with God? This is not a question for you, but it's a question for me as well. a question for both of us because we're both looking to get closer to God again. How bad do we want our relationship with God? That doesn't mean that you have to spend all the time in the Bible. That doesn't mean that you have to stay up for the midnight hour. No, it means, are we going to be consistent with walking with God and listening to what He tells us to do? If we say that we want to walk with God, but our actions are consistently refusing to, go where He's leading, then we have to readjust. Like, God doesn't owe us life. He doesn't owe us life. He gifts us life. He doesn't owe us relationship. He's extending and offering us relationship. And if we're going to be real, trust can only be developed with God through obedience. And honestly, I will be the first one to admit I don't like being told what to do. And I know you don't either. So ask yourself, what needs a boundary? What needs a boundary today? Journal through questions like, what is consistently distracting me from God? What do I keep making room for that's not helping me to grow? What is it that I have been praying to God for but refusing to obey? Refusing to walk in the steps of what I'm praying for, in other words. And what boundary will create more room for my relationship with God? I want you to choose one thing that you know that needs boundaries and make that practical decision to follow through consistently, right? An example of this is my phone has been taking up a lot of my time. So a boundary would be, I'm not going to use my phone unless it's for work purposes. I'm going to put my phone away from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. to spend time with God, right? Whatever boundary you set, just allow it to serve the relationship. Okay? Bestie, you do not have to become a completely different person or force a connection to reconnect with God. I think when we think through things most of the time, if you're like me, you can get overwhelmed by all of the information, right? But it's one step at a time. Just one tiny step. And the only thing you really have to do, the only thing that you're really doing daily is choosing to be in the relationship. Choosing to make room for Him, choosing to listen to Him, and choosing to respond to Him with action. This is all that's required of you in your relationship with Christ. Again, what if you never really was disconnected from God? What if you only needed to be reminded that He's always been near? This audio, it was all about how to get close to God again. And before you go, let's recap. Here are a few reminders of what it means to be close to God. Being close to God has little to do with feelings. Being close to God is all about your openness, your awareness, your connection, and your willingness to become one with Him. And finally, there isn't anything complicated about it. It's literally very similar to reconnecting with an old friend. Thank you for listening to this audio. Again, this was all about how to get closer to God again when you feel disconnected. I want you to always remember that you're destined to win because He got up.